Thumb. To all my brothers, Yahweh Shema, Alathaba, Shimi Al-Shai, to all my sisters. Universal practical knowledge. Started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. We've been teaching so-called Negroes and so-called Hispanics that they're the Lord's chosen people according to the Bible. We've been teaching this truth since 1969 under Commander General Yohana. Today is our history class. Today we're going to be talking about, the ancient Coliseums in Rome, as well as the Olympics in Greek, and how it correlates today to today's modern sports. From ticket sales, from the excitement of violence, from the excitement of off what's really going on. Sports is a tool to keep our minds to keep our mind issues, and more specifically, as you know, in the sports world, there's been quite a few protests in the sports world, and sports might be one of the major tools to send a message. Commander General Yohana brought out a video about the famous Mike Dichter, who had some words to say about the black athletes that decided to stand up for their people. And it goes to show you the nature of our oppressor and how he has no compassion for anybody else but his own. For him not to be able to, for Mike Dichter not to be able to understand why certain athletes decided to use their form of protest for the injustice and the police killings that are common and that have been going on since for the last 400 years. Considering this is the same man that played with black athletes, this is the same man that coached black athletes, and lo and behold, our oppressor shows his true color every time. And this is why the Lord requires us to separate from our enemies. And on a grand scale, with the idea of separating from our enemies, we have to understand that we have to build our own NBA, our own NFL. We have to establish our own sports infrastructures. So that way, we could benefit off the billions of dollars that they're making off our blood, sweat, and tears. And what you'll start to understand is that a lot of these athletes are no different than professional gladiators or slaves that were thrown in the Coliseums for what they called the games. And it's very important to see how ancient Rome resembles America today. You know what I mean? But we'll get into it. Before we do that, if there's any questions online, Shalom Erskine, Shalom Rock. If there's any questions online, by all means ask your questions. I thought this was a very important topic to really see that this is something that has been going on since the days of Rome and Greece. Since the Etruscan games, this influence that Rome and Greece had in their in the realm of sporting, more specifically violent sporting, came from the Etruscan games. And let's look it up. The Etruscan games, just to get a history of this. We'll pull it up real quick. The Etruscan sports. Let's look at the dynamic of this. I'm going to pull this up real quick since there's no questions. Let's see. I want to get a good one. All right. Salaki, bear with me. Let me just pull this up real quick. Let's give a quick overview. We'll go to the there's a website called district106.net. It's a specific thing in chapter 32, the early development of Rome, right? And let's scroll down. All right, I'm gonna try to get this on the screen if you can see it. Let me see if I can get this on the screen real quick. Salakia, bear with me. Stepping up my technical abilities. But let's get this up on the screen right quick. We're gonna read this real quick. See if I can get it up. 1 second, bear with me. In ancient Rome. So, to get a history of what was going on, you got to go back to, you got to understand that Rome at the time had about 250 theaters, right? And those 250 amphitheaters comprised the ones that were used as sport were more specifically prisoners of war, people that were being condemned to die, servants. Rome had had a huge slave market. But more specifically, if Nero was the one that sparked the idea of a Coliseum. But if you understand what happened in Jerusalem in 70 AD, a Roman general by the name of Vespasian and his son Titus, Christ had prophesied that that Jerusalem would be sacked and spoiled in Matthew 24. So around 70 AD, during the first and second Jew wars that went on, a Roman general by the name of Vespasian and his son Titus sacked Jerusalem. Now it took some time because you got to understand the dynamic of how the temple was built. Imagine if you're looking at the temple, there's a huge wall that encircles the inner courts of the temple, right? Then when you get through that first set of walls, there's another wall that encircles that. So it was a series of inner courts to actually get to the temple, to get into the city. And so when they sacked Jerusalem, Christ prophesied. Let's go to Matthew 24. It's a good question you brought that up. And before I even get to that, I don't want to lose my thought because I want to pull this up real quick. Just let me see if I can get this up before we go to Matthew 24. Let's see if it pops up. Let me see if I can get it. get it to pop up. So let me know if the display pops up. I think it did. All right, here's what it says, right? I'm going to highlight it real quick so you know what I'm reading, right? So I want to read this real quick before we even get to that, right? Who the gladiators were. Remember, Rome was like America is today. Let me go back to the screen. Rome was like what America is, of a lot of different nations, including the Israelites. And so, just take a look at how America has the majority in America is the so-called white man, right? In America he comprises of about 200 million compared to 300 million altogether, population-wise altogether. And similar, Rome had a bunch of people from all different nations that now a lot of those people were conquered. You got to remember, Rome's empire was a vast empire, so a lot of those people were conquered, and later on became part of Roman society. And a lot of those that were captured, a lot of those that were POWs, a lot of those were them that were in the games in Rome, right? They were the gladiators in Rome as well. And during the time where the first and second Jew wars, when Jerusalem got sacked, many fled, but a lot of them were captured. And it is for certain that many of those that were captured during the sack of Jerusalem built the Coliseum. You know what I mean? Many of those built the Coliseum, and many of those black people, many of those Israelites were used in the games. So if you go through a timeline of history and you understood what happened between 68 AD when Nero was in power and during the military campaign of Vespasian and his son Titus was the one that actually finished the building of the Coliseum, and he started the 100-day games at that time. More important than ticket sales, it was more about, showing the wealth of the emperor, showing his generosity, catering and to the aristocrats of Rome at that time. So the social issues could be brushed under the rug while everybody was excited about the games. The social issues and the geopolitical issues were brushed under the rug. Just to be clear of what was going on at that time. We'll read further on, but so I wanted to read this. The Etruscan. So this is the development of Rome, right? The Greeks, right? But I want to start at verse 32. I'm sure if you can see it, verse 32, chapter 32, verse 3. Let's do this. It says this: the Romans became great builders. They learned many techniques about engineering or the science of building from the Etruscans. Two important Etruscan structures the Romans borrowed, which were the arch and the caniculus. Now, when you go to a stadium today, notice that when you go into a stadium, more specifically like a football stadium, you'll see that there's an arch in each entranceway where the spectators go to be seated. There's always an arch, and the arch plays a significant role. It goes back to the days of the Colosseums in Rome, but more importantly, it really goes back to the engineering of the Etruscans. Let's keep reading, right? So now when you go to, let's keep reading. It says the Etruscan arches rested on two pillars. The pillars supported a half circle of wedge-shaped stones. A key stone in the center held the stones in place. The caniculus was a long underground trench. Vertical shafts connected it to the ground above. Etruscans used these trenches to irrigate land. They also used them to drain swamps to carry water to their cities. The Romans adopted both of these structures. In time, they became even better engineers than the Etruscans. They used arches to build huge public works, including bridges, stadiums, and aqueducts. You got to remember the Romans advanced the engineering of building structures, right? And so what you have to understand is that while the Greeks adopted the ideas of the Etruscans, what the Romans did was they were the first ones to actually come up with the idea of cement using limestone, right? And this created a even stronger structure and allowed them to make the arch shapes that they needed in a more sophisticated manner. Now, why is the engineering important? Because when you look at modern day stadiums today, they've gotten all their engineering techniques and ideas from the Romans, right? And the Romans had, you got to understand, they had beautiful engineering structures that amazed people. And this is what it's all about. When someone sees a mass structure and sees the intricate details in the structure, and they see the advancement of engineering, and it becomes a spectacle to them. It becomes something that is grandeur. And so now the excitement of going to these games, the first impression of going into a stadium that could fit 50,000, going into a Coliseum that could fit 50 to 80,000 people. There's something that gets your blood flowing. You know what I mean? The roaring of the crowd and how it echoes throughout the stadium. It's a rush, right? So I just wanted to bring up the engineering structure on that they got it from the Etruscans, and you'll look it up. They also got their sportings from the Etruscans, but what the Romans kind of they turned it up a notch with the violence, all right? And more specifically, a majority of those, just to answer your question, a majority of those gladiators were Israelites who later became famous men, right? You got to remember, gladiators, the ones that were really good, amassed a lot of wealth and started to gain power in Rome. And this power that they started to gain in Rome, also they started to gain influence, right? And now you had a series of men that were gladiators that became wealthy in Rome, that influenced Rome, which leads up to Constantine around 400 AD and the spark of his empire, which then leads to the fall of Rome and walking into the Dark Ages, where it comprised of the Moors in Europe and black people ruling Europe. But we could go to a historical timeline to figure that out, to note what was going on. But let me finish reading this real quick. It says right here, now the influence of the Etruscan sporting events, right? Here's what it says. Romans, I want to read this. It's kind of light, but if you can see it, it says this, the influence of Etruscan sporting events. Romans also adopted two bloody Etruscan sporting events. The first was slave fighting. So these events originally came from the Etruscans, the whole idea of slave fighting. Let me tell you something. When you look at a modern day boxing event, right, and the hype that's built around it, it's really two slaves fighting. That's really what it is. and a lot of times it causes internal brain damage to a lot of those athletes that take part in UFC or boxing or kickfighting. There's all kinds of martial arts sporting events where it does create internal brain damage or sometimes leads to one's death. And so let's keep reading. I want to go back to this real quick. The Etruscan custom fights during funerals. 2 slaves of the dead master fought to the death with swords and small shields. After being congratulated, the winner was executed. The Etruscans also enjoyed watching chariot races. The drivers or charioteers were strapped to their chariots. If a chariot overturned, a driver could be dragged under the chariot's wheels or trampled by the horses. These fierce competitions often resulted in injury or death. The Etruscan sports became popular amusements in Rome. The Roman stadiums, thousands of slaves died fighting as gladiators. The gladiators fought against each other or wild animals, and Romans flocked to see the charioteers risk their lives racing 4-horse teams. Now, let me go back. So now you get a sense of who the Romans got this influence from, right? And who we got this influence from. Rome just stepped it up a notch. I mean, hundreds of people were slaughtered during these games. They were bringing such exotic animals, right? That the society, those in the society of Rome, have never seen before, right? And so this is what really pumped up the minds of the mass, and it was used as a control mechanism to keep the peace, to highlight and glorify the emperor for bringing out the games. More people in 2020. I mean, people were so devastated. This COVID-19, when it shut down the sports world, some people were ready to jump off a cliff, right? Because some people build their lives around sports, right? Their everyday conversation is sports. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and all they talk about is the Patriots, the Celtics, and the Red Sox. But you got to understand that when other matters should be addressed in regards to our people, in regards to the atrocities that's going on with our people, we're more concerned about Tom Brady. We're more concerned about the Boston Red Sox. We're more concerned about the Celtics. And this is what they want from you. And a good slave knows how to keep his mouth shut, right? The whole Colin Kaepernick situation, that right there was a rebel, right? Now, understand, right? Rebellious slaves always get reprimanded. You know what I mean? They always get they always are going to be used as an example when they speak out. Same thing that happened with, what's that brother's name? Nick Cannon. When Nick Cannon got out of line because he spoke some historical facts about his people, right? Colin Kaepernick got out of line when he decided to not stand for the national anthem, right? And anytime a slave gets out of line, our oppressor will make sure that he uses you as an example, that there will be consequences for your behavior. You know what I mean? Massa needs to know that his slaves are going to behave, right? Which is how you're able to get the big bucks, right? But let's keep. But that's all I wanted to read. The other thing is, me go back over here. Okay. So now let's go to Matthew chapter 24. All right. Let's go there real quick. If you can, I'm going to just type it in. Matthew chapter 24. All right. Matthew 24. All right. So now, this is a chapter because Christ is prophesying what was going to happen in the last days. Right? Understand, even during the time of Paul, it was considered, they would always mention the last days. Right? They would always remind the schools about the what was to come in the last days. But Christ really gave a depiction of what was going to happen in regards to Jerusalem being sacked. But I want to read this real quick. Right? Matthew chapter 24. It says this. And Yahushua went out. Let me read it for any Christians out there that don't know who Yahushua is. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. So his disciples understand that these niggas, they from the hood, right? A lot of them never even seen these marvelous buildings that were in Jerusalem at this time, right? So his disciples are showing him the building because they're so marveled by the craftsmanship of these buildings, the beauty of these buildings, and their height and their mass. His disciples are marveled by it. So they go to Christ to show him these temples. And here's what Christ said. And Yahushua said unto them, see ye not all these things? So Yahushua is pointing out to the disciples and saying, you see all these buildings right here? And keep in mind, the temple, just put this in your mind, a picture in your mind of how the temple is. The temple wasn't just one building, but it was a series of buildings. It was more like a campus, right? When you go to a campus, you'll see a series of buildings, right, in the campus. So that's why the disciples were showing him the buildings, plural, right, of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, verse 2, and Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that it shall not be thrown down. So Christ is giving them a prophecy right now. He's saying, well, you see all these buildings right here that you're so marveled by? Right? He said not one stone is going to be left upon another. He's talking about, Christ right here is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Right? And then he goes on to further explain what shall be the sign of his coming and the end of the world, right? So now, let's jump to verse... All right, let's jump to verse 15. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, it says this. When ye shall see, therefore, the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. When you go to the book of Daniel, in the book of Daniel, he prophesied about the abomination of desolation, right? That's why he said spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Now, let's read it again. Verse 15. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. What Christ is bringing up is the prophecy of Daniel. And this prophecy is when in 70 AD, right? Now we're going to go back to the history. We're going to read on the history real quick. In 70 AD, when the Romans sacked Jerusalem, you got to remember it took literally 6 months to really to really break the barriers of those walls and to get in there. And so what the Romans did is they surrounded the city. And when they surrounded the city, they cut off all entry points to the city so that no food can go in and nobody can go out. So basically what they did is they starved us to the point where when you read the book of Josephus, it talks about how we were eating our leather belts. That's how hungry we were. So they basically starved us out. And while that was going on, chaos ensued inside the city. And a lot of factions or different groups were going around committing heinous crimes and really just, it came down to like literally gang wars within the city, right? And so if you go back to verse 15, when it says the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, what the Romans did and what Daniel was talking about and what Christ was reiterating was that the Romans were sacrificing, I'll give you, I don't want to give it to you. How about this? What animal is considered an abomination if you eat? What animal in the law of Moses, Leviticus 11, is considered an abomination if you eat it? There's one specific animal that black people cannot let go, right? I'll give it a sec. If you know what animal did the Romans sacrifice in the temple, which was considered the abomination of desolation. All right, let me give it to you. Understand, eating swine's flesh is an abomination to the Most High. So what the Romans were doing after they sacked Jerusalem and took all the gold and the silver in the temple and anything of monetary value just to mock us, they did the same thing that the Greeks did. They took swine and sacrificed it onto the altars, right? Which is what Daniel was talking about when Daniel prophesied that Jerusalem was going to get sacked in 70 AD. Christ is bringing up Daniel's prophecy, right? Verse 16, here's what Christ said right after that. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains, and those that escaped the onslaught of the Romans, they fled onto the mountains. If you look at a map and you look at the terrain of where Jerusalem is situated, then you go east towards Rome, and you go west towards Africa. Africa was known for the terrains in Africa were known for its mountains. So a lot of us had fled from Judea, from Jerusalem, and into the mountains, into a place where we could blend in into Africa, right? It's the central, migrating in the central, mainly in the central and eastern parts of Africa, right? The land of Ham, right? And so it says, let them which be in the housetop not come down to say anything, to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. So what does he mean? He's saying, man, listen, don't even come back to grab any of your possession. This prophecy came true in 70 AD when Vespasian and Titus came and sacked Jerusalem. We're going to pull that up real quick, all right? Let me get this real quick. I'm going to pull this up real quick. Let's pull up what actually went down. Vespasian. All right, we're gonna pull up what went down. All right, I'm gonna pull this up real quick. Let me see. Let me know if you can see it on the screen. All right. Okay. It says this, right? We're in history.com. It says, located just east of Roman Forum, the massive stone amphitheater known as the Coliseum was commissioned around 70 to 72 AD by Emperor Vespasian of the Fisti as a gift to the Roman people. So now, for Vespasian to win the hearts of the Roman people, he built this Coliseum as a gift to them. And he built it as a gift, right? Give me 1 second. He built it as a gift to the Romans to win the hearts of the people. You got to understand at that time, right? You got to understand at that time, there was an emperor by the name of Nero, who, Khan, I see your answer, Erskine. That's correct. Now there was an emperor at that time who had a pretty bad reputation, who died in 68 AD. So what the Romans had to do, or what Vespasian had to do at the time, right? Vespasian had to win the hearts of the people, right? And by presenting the Coliseum as a gift to them and entertaining them was how he was able to win the hearts of the people. This is the same way that our oppressor thinks today. In order for him to calm the crowd, to win the hearts of the people, sporting events play a major role, right? In winning the hearts of the people, taking the minds of the people out of what really matters and putting them into the realm of sporting events to really sway them from any social or political issues, right? And this is a technique that has been exercised in many societies, but in more particularly, the Greek and Roman society used this as a tool to maintain power, to maintain control, to you know what I mean? Because of the bad reputation that Nero had 2 years prior. So now, let's keep reading. All right, Salaki. Let me get the other one. Okay. It says this. We're right over here. In AD, Vespasian's son Titus opened the Coliseum, known as the Flavian Amphitheater, with 100 days of games, including gladiatorial combats and wild animal fights. After 4 centuries of active use, the magnificent arena fell into neglect up into the 18th century. Right? Now let's keep reading. We're going to go back. We're going to go to the origins of the Colosseum. This is what I want to read right here. Even after a decadent Roman Emperor Nero, AD 68, his misrule fueled a series of civil wars. So now, when the new Emperor Vespasian came onto the scene, understand that Rome at that time was in turmoil. There was a lot of civil wars that took place because of this cat named Nero, who eventually ended up taking his own life. He was also known for plotting on the city of Rome burning, right? He's famously known for burning the city of Rome down to the ground. He's known for building the most one of the most architectural structures in Rome as well, right? But let's keep reading. No fewer than 4 emperors took the throne in tumultuous year after Nero's death. The 4th, Vespasian, who ended up ruling for 10 years. The Flavian emperors were known, attempted to tone down the excesses of the Roman court, restore Senate authority. Fan pot la, please. You know what I mean? Salaki, let me Salaki, fan pot la, close the door for me. Alright, let's go back to this. Alright, so now let's get to Salakia. Satan going hard out there in these streets. Let's go. Salakia. Let me all right, let's get it. All right, so now let's go back to this real quick. 1 second. Let me just pull this up. I want to pull this up real quick. All right, the Flavian emperors, as Vespasian and his sons and Domitian were known, attempted to tone down the excesses of the Roman court, right? Restore Senate authority and promote public welfare. So now there was there was definitely a breakdown in Roman society during these civil wars. And when you think about what's going on with COVID-19, with all the rioting and all the protesting, yeah, Nero was mentally unstable. He was the emperor that burned down Rome, yeah. So yeah, he did have some mental issues. And he created a sort of a collapse in Rome with all the he created a collapse in Rome with all the rioting that was going on, right? With all the civil wars that were going on. And so now when you think about what's going on in America today, right? How COVID-19 has shut down, damn near shut down the country, and people were losing their jobs, and rioting ensued and chaos ensued. Understand that what's very particular about this is that one of the things that it really shut down, that allowed people to focus on the issue at hand, was the sporting arenas, was the sports realm. With the sports realm being shut down, now people didn't have a scapegoat. They didn't have this go-to entertainment to take their minds off their stress, and their home, no job. And so what happens? This is how gangsters are formed. This is how society has unrest. So sporting is a very selective tool to really put the people's minds at ease. If our so-called oppressor did not have his sports, he would go out and he would exercise violence on an everyday basis. But when he comes out of work, or when he works a long work week, and he's able to kick back and watch the game at night, and watch the sporting events, watch boxing, watch UFC, he's able to fulfill that lust to murder. He's able to fulfill that lust for violence by being able to use sports, right? But let's keep going. Around 70 to 72, Vespasian returned. Let me pull this up real quick. Right? The Flavian emperors, as Vespasian and his sons Titus and Domitian were known, attempted to tone down the excesses of the Roman court, restore Senate authority, and promote public welfare. Around 70 to 72 AD, Vespasian returned to the Roman people the lush land near the center of the city where Nero had built an enormous place for himself after a great fire ripped through Rome in AD 64. On the site of the Golden Palace, he decreed he would build a new amphitheater where the public could enjoy gladiatorial combats and other forms of entertainment. So here's another thing. Anytime there's some sort of disaster that happens in a society, right? And more specifically in 64 AD, how Rome almost damn near burnt down because of this madman Nero and all this civil unrest. Their greatest tool is to entertain the people, to get their mind off their state of living at that time. And this is what sports does. It gives you a rush. It gives you that rush that you need, that can calm you down after you've seen a couple of slaves get slaughtered or beat the hell out of each other. This is what our oppressor needs. And the powers that be in America, in Babylon, understand the dynamics of sports and calming civil unrest. He understands that, right? Let's keep reading. After nearly a decade of construction, a relatively quick time period for a project such as grand scale, Titus officially dedicated the Coliseum in 80 AD with the festival including 100 days of games. A well-loved ruler, Titus had earned his people's devotion with his handling of recovery efforts after the infamous eruption of the Vesuvius in AD 79, which destroyed the towns of Herculaneum and Pompeii. Never knew what happened in Pompeii. Pompeii was a city on the outskirts of Rome, and there was a volcano that erupted, and it looked like Salakia. I don't know what that is.
We built Ford Super Duty.
Let me just turn that off. Right? So it looked like fire and brimstone was coming down on Pompeii and burnt the whole city. Even to this day, they have ashes of the people that are just like the city was just burnt into ashes from this devastation. So Titus, Vespasian's son, needed a scapegoat to really restore the love of the people back to the emperor. And so what he did was he started the 100 days of games, and he was well loved for it, right? He was well loved for this. But let's go into on this real quick. I want to pull up okay. All right, so Salaki, let me just pull this up real quick. All right, I want to go to another source real quick, right? To further explain how we were the ones used to build the Coliseum. All right, let's go to the right source. Okay. Now, what you have to understand, right? You have to understand that how was the question you have to ask is how was the Coliseum funded, right? Understand that we had mass amount of wealth in the temple in Jerusalem, and so when that got sacked, the Romans used all the spoils of war, the booty is what they would call it, and they used it to build the Coliseum, right? Let me go to this route. All right, let's go here real quick. So here's a I want to go to two sources real quick. All right, so let me see if you can see this on the screen. Let's pull this up real quick. All right. Okay, it says this. The Roman Coliseum and the Jews. The Bet Hamikdash, the great temple of Jerusalem, was destroyed and burnt down by the army of Titus, the son of Vespasian, on 9 of Ab of the year 68. The temple continued to be consumed by the flames also in the following day, the 10th of Ab, right? So, so we know that the temple was burnt down. Now let's keep reading. The historian, the circus and the Jews, the historian Flavius Josephus, who witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem, writes that the Romans killed 1,100,000 Jews during the years of the siege of Jerusalem. Titus also took 97,000 Jews captives. These prisoners were part of the spoils of war and were used primarily for exhibition and entertainment. Josephus relates that when Titus arrived at Caesarea, he organized public games, the infamous Roman circus, where 2,500 Jewish prisoners were killed, forced to fight against hungry wild beasts or against professional gladiators. Titus continued with these games, killing thousands of Jews until he arrived to Rome. So, understand, we read earlier that Christ prophesied that Jerusalem was going to be burnt down and sacked. That's why when his disciples looked at him and said, and they marveled at the structures of the temple, Christ said every stone will be cast to the ground. This is going to be burnt down. All this that you see here, and he prophesied it, and its history will find. And many of those Jews were killed. It says around 1,100,000, over 1 million Jews were killed. But let's go back to this. Once in Rome, Titus received as a great hero by his father, the Emperor Vespasian. Together they organized a procession of victory for having defeated an enemy as audacious and as powerful as the Jewish people. So now, they considered the Jewish people to be the Jews. Let me be correct. They considered the Jews to be audacious and powerful, right? So basically, during the First and Second Jew Wars, the Romans realized that these people were a threat, and that they had to be handled, right? So now let's keep reading real quick. It says this. Since as everyone knew, the Jews, though divided, fought with all their intelligence, perseverance, and audacity. The Romans also organized a grand parade where the Jewish prisoners were publicly humiliated, and the treasures of Jerusalem were exhibited. So now, what did they do when they sacked Jerusalem? Right? They flaunted all the treasures that they got. I mean, keep in mind, this is the temple, right? This is the second temple. The first temple was destroyed, and those that were part of that temple was rebuilt again during the time of, I believe, Nehemiah or Ezra. I want to say Nehemiah, right? But let's keep reading. Let's go back to this real quick. So now they're flexing with our jewelry, right? They're flexing with the gold that they sacked, the spoils of war, right? All right. The Shulhan Hapanim, a sanctuary, and especially the famous menorah, also made of pure gold. The last item that was exhibited was the Sefer Torah, for which the Romans symbolized their triumph against the Jewish faith. Defeating the Jews is a mission impossible when God is with us. As the sages explain, beat us except when we become unfit of God's presence among us. When we abandon the paths of the Most High, as it happened in the first temple, or when we fought amongst ourselves, it happened in the second temple, when we disconnect from the Most High and remain at the mercy of the enemy, right? Now let's keep reading. Now at this time, you got to remember, we were under wicked leadership in Israel at this time, right? Christ set about a movement that rocked Rome, right? When I tell you it rocked Rome, I mean it turned Rome upside down. You got to remember, Christ was a revolutionary, so it turned Rome upside down. So now, what do we have to say then? Now, Christ also knew that the society itself would fall, and there would be a lot of social and political issues. And around that time, you got to remember that the Romans, right? And this is very important to remember. Just like they were in league with the Greeks during the time when we were under Greek captivity. Let's go to 2 Maccabees chapter 4, verse 9. 2 Maccabees chapter 4, verse 9. Salaki, let me pull this up real quick. All right, so let's go to let's start at 2 Maccabees. We're gonna start at 14. 2 Maccabees chapter 4, verse 14. It says this: that the priests had no courage to serve anymore, but despising the temple, neglecting the sacrifices, hastened to be partakers of the unlawful allowance in the place of exercise after the game of discus called forth, not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all. And, you know, understand that our priests at the time in Greece were not committed to the temple anymore, right? And they wanted to, they became, they transformed themselves in the manner of the Grecians. That's why it says this, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all, right? It says, by reason whereof sore calamity came upon them, for they had them to be their enemies and avengers, whose custom they followed so earnestly, and unto them they decide to be like in all things. Let me tell you something. The Lord will come against ourselves unto our enemies, right? If we liken the glory of the Grecians or the Romans today, the Lord, calamity will come upon us if we do that. And our leaders, this is what our black and Hispanic leaders have done, right? But it says this, for it is not a light thing to do wickedly against the laws of the Most High, but the time following should declare these things, right? The minute we start to despise the laws of the Most High and we stop doing the work, yep, that would be the Salah. Yeah, Khan. That would be the Pharisees who were the leaders. It would also, it wasn't just the Pharisees, it was also the aristocrats of Israel, right? Remember this, right? One thing you must remember is that the warfare that's been going on amongst our people has always been between the rich and the poor. The aristocrats and the poor, right? That's always been the warfare. And the rich have always likened themselves onto the Grecians, onto our oppressor. They always wanted to fit in and be of the same status. And you know what I mean? And has taken on the glory of our oppressor, the covering of our oppressor, which is why the civil rights movement sparked off. The civil rights movement sparked off because rich aristocrat black people wanted to eat in the same restaurants as in the same expensive restaurants as their oppressor. And so how else do I, position myself to be equal to my oppressor, to be able to sit in the same restaurant as him and not feel any less? Well, let's start the civil rights movement. And let's use the poor to ignite this movement. Right? But let's keep reading. Let's go to let's go back to this real quick. I want to pull this up. It says this. It says this. For Rome, the triumph against the Jews was extremely significant. To understand it a little better, and let us remember that around the period of the time the Romans defeated the Macedonians, the Greeks, the Gauls, the British, and the Germans, they also triumphed in Spain, Sicily, and Carthage. But only the victory against the Jews was celebrated in a special way. You got to remember that the Romans damn near conquered the known world. And all the people that they defeated, it wasn't no grand celebration for their defeat like it was when they defeated us. And this is what it's explaining right here. Let me go back. The monument that the Romans erected, the oldest, the most splendid, and the only one that still exists, is the famous Arch of Titus in Via Sacra, which celebrates the triumph over the Jews. This arch, which among other decorations features 12 Roman soldiers carrying the menorah, taken from the temple was designed to humiliate Jewish captives brought from Jerusalem, making them parade under the arch as a sign of defeat, right? So they went about, after they captured us, they went about to humiliate us, right? They went about to humiliate us, right? And so now we have to understand that the Greeks and the Romans, they're here today. Understand that. And what does the Bible say when it comes to your enemy? The Bible says this: never trust thine enemy. And the reason why we were put in this position under under this particular captivity is because of our leaders. Our leaders are the problem. They've been the problem since Greece, right? Like I read earlier, how the priests profaned the altar, right? How they took on the customs of the Grecians, right? And likewise, the Sadducees and Pharisees were also in league with the Romans, which is why Christ in John chapter 8 verse 44, when he was battling the Sadducees and Pharisees, he said, "Ye are of your father the devil." He was talking about them being the children of our oppressor, the Romans, meaning ye are of your father the devil, meaning he was talking about the Romans and how the Sadducees and Pharisees have sold our people out and was in league with the Romans, right? But let's keep reading. We'll go back real quick. Okay. It says this. We're right over here. The Romans also minted new coins to celebrate their victory over the Jews. These famous coins show a woman, Judea, sitting under a dry palm with her hand tied, and on the other side of the palm tree, a victorious Roman soldier. The coin says Judea capta. The province of Judea has been captured. This is a well-known coin that they had, and they did this. They minted coins to commemorate the victory that they had over us. All right? So now, why is this important? Because what we have to understand is that our athletes would rather, a lot of our athletes would rather enjoy the pleasures, right? And the trinkets that our oppressor has to offer than to give it all up and stand for his people, right? What holds back a Nick Cannon, what holds back professional black athletes is the fact that they have to give up the threat of losing their wealth to stand up for own. This is the reason why you can't rely on the rich of Israel. You can't rely on your athletes, right? They're playing so hard and training so hard to go into the league to get away from you. Remember that, right? What you ask a kid what their dreams and their aspirations. I want to grow up and be an NBA star so I can get the hell out the hood. People that think like that, they want to get away from you. They no longer want to live in this environment with you. They no longer want to suffer with you either. Which is why if you thought about it, if all the athletes and all the entertainers and all these black movie stars decided, hey, you know what? We're going to open up our own Hollywood. You know what I mean? We're going to do Black Hollywood. We're going to open up our own leagues, our own NBA, our own NFL. We're going to pool our money together. And we're going to be the owners. We're going to be the CEO. Imagine if we knew what the Lord formulated, the success that the Lord, the blueprint success that the Lord put together for us. You want to know what the blueprint of success is for us, and for us to be above all people and to be on top? It's simple. Deuteronomy 7 and 6. Y'all knew where I was going, right? Deuteronomy 7 and 6. It says this. It says, "For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God." The Lord has considered us to be a holy people, right? Meaning separate. Meaning separateness, right? And so, even when we're establishing businesses, we should have the mindset of being separate. When we establish our cities, right? And when we establish our infrastructures, we have to think, just like every other nation, exercise the law of separateness, which is why the Chinese are able to be so successful in their businesses, in their business ventures, which is why the Arabs are able to be so successful, because they stick. God said that we are a holy people, meaning we are not to take on the customs of the heathens. We are not to look on them as a way of envy, right? But it says, "The Lord thy God had chosen thee to be a special people up unto himself, above all people," not some people, I'm reading it again, "above all people that are upon the face of the earth," right? Meaning this, the blueprint to rebuilding our nation and to being on top as Black and Hispanic people is quite simple. The Lord put together and that works for every other nation. And the framework is to be holy, meaning to be separate, to be about our own business, to say, you know what? Imagine if every NBA star, imagine if every NFL star, imagine if every entertainer left on the dime and said, you know what? We're going to do our own movies. We're going to do our own productions. We're going to do our own. Imagine how it would cripple this place. This America would implode overnight, and Black America would be way up top. We're the ones that are making billionaires. We've always been the one that made billionaires, right? But let's keep reading, right? Here's the part I wanted to bring up. Let's talk about the Coliseum. With the spoils taken from Judea and from the temple, the Romans increased their wealth remarkably. And in the time of Vespasian, Rome lived in opulence for several years. A few years ago, a Latin text was discovered stating that the Vespasian financed the construction of the infamous Coliseum in Rome, where prisoners of war were being killed for amusement, with the treasures stolen from Jerusalem and the temple. You know what I mean? But let's keep reading, right? The Arch of Titus. So like I mentioned earlier, what financed the Coliseum and how Vespasian at the time of his rulership was able to amass so much wealth was the spoil of war when they came against us, right? And they spoiled the temple. The Arch of Titus. For hundreds of years, the Jewish community of Rome refused to walk under the arch. All right? Let's keep reading. Let's go to the menorah. In 1949, the menorah of the Arch of Titus was chosen as the official symbol of the new state of Israel. That's not the part I want to get to. All right. So one last thing I want to talk about. Let's drop that. One last thing I want to talk about. Now, why is it that the Coliseum is similar to the arenas that you see today, right? And let's really dive into this, right? understand this, right? We know that it was funded by the Jewish temple, right? And it was funded by the Jew-Roman War in 70 CE, right? And we understand that the Coliseum was like was basically a marvel of engineering, right? But I want to go to one real quick, and I want to show you the similarities before we jump out of there. I'm gonna pull this up real quick, all right? Salakia, let me pull this up real quick. Salakia, bear with me. Let's pull this up real quick. I want to show you the similarities between your modern day arenas today and Salaki. Let me just get this. I know I got it here somewhere. Let me pull this up. Bear with me, y'all. I'm gonna pull this up real quick. We got about 10 minutes. Definitely gonna show you the similarities. All right, here. I think I got it right here. So what I'm gonna bring up is I want to show you how a typical day of games in Rome were, and how it's similar to what you see today in our sports arenas today. And you let me know what you think about it. You know what I mean? But let's go to, let me see if I can find it. Let's see if I can, give me 1 second. All right, here it is. Okay, so let me pull the screen real quick. All right. Yeah, I found it. Okay, so now let's read this real quick, right? All right, we're going to start here, right? It says this. I'm hoping you can see it on the screen. It says the Coliseum was a marvel of engineering. The oval-shaped building had in concrete facade with numerous arches and columns. And this is how, like, when you go to certain football games, you will see all these huge arches and columns within the stadium, right? It says the outer wall stood 157 feet high. The central arena, which measured 290 feet by 180 feet, was surrounded by tiers of seats and standing areas capable of holding 45 to 50,000 people. So now understand this, right? When it says tiers of seat, it's talking about where people sat during depending on their social status. That's what it's talking about, right? There's if you go to a basketball game today, there's the lower seats, right? Where, you know, the people that have paid the most money for the tickets will sit courtside. Then there's the nosebleed section where them tickets are damn near free, but you know, God forbid if you wear glasses or you your eyes are beady, you ain't gonna be able to see the game at all. Then there's certain clubs and certain areas in the arena where the CEO will be, where the commissioner would be, where the politicians would be. So there's different tiers of seats, right? Remember that. And this is the same that it was in Rome, right? Let's keep reading. It says this. spectators in the Coliseum were seated according to rank. The lower tiers of seats belonged to public officials and members of upper classes of society. So now if you looked at the Coliseum in Rome, the lower seats were for those upper class citizens of society. Above this area were the seats reserved for the middle classes. The lower classes had to climb even higher, this talking about the nosebleed section, to reach their seats near the top of the amphitheater. Now, read this part right here. It says this: a complex ticketing system controlled the admittance of spectators to the arena and determined their location of seats. Let me tell you something. Your modern day sports today is the Coliseum, because they said this: they had a complex ticketing system that determined where your seat was. So you would look at your ticket, you would find an archway to go to, and you would find your seat, right? There it is, the box seat for the owners. That's what I meant, yep. And it was the same way during the time of Rome. It says, I'm gonna read it again, just so you know I'm not making this up. Let me pull it up on the screen. It says, a complex ticketing system controlled the admittance of spectators to the arena and determined the location of the seats. Tickets which were free in entrance row and seat. A canvas awning stretched over the seating areas, providing shade for the spectators on bright sunny days. Right? Let's keep reading. Let's see what else is similar. Gladiators in ancient Rome, slave or captive who participated in combats that were staged for public entertainments. We know that's including the fighters, the players, right? Let's keep reading. Series of rows arranged one above the other as in a stadium, right? So it's giving you the similarity as in your modern day stadium. The floor of the arena was made of wood and covered with sand. 2 levels of rooms of corridors ran beneath the arena floor. Cages in this underground area housed wild animals, right? Now understand, just like you see a corridor where the players come out and they announce the teams and they come out, or they announce the fighter, likewise it was the same. There was a corridor under the Coliseum that would go up to the level where the action was. That was the same thing. And they also had announcers to announce the fighters, right? Let's keep reading. And it says this: and an elaborate system of narrow passageways, pulley-drawn elevators, and trap doors facilitated the safe movement of animals to the arena. So you got to understand, during the time of Rome, the Colosseums had just to be able to entertain the spectators. They had pulley-drawn elevators, right, where someone would come in, like to be able to draw up the animals. Or another thing is, you ever watch the movie Gladiator, when he's fighting the dude and the ground opens up and the lion comes out, right? So they had all kinds of engineering engineering to make this, a full grand show. You know what I mean? They had but what time we have here? All right, that's my time, man. I gotta cut the class short. But just understand that, in the UPK, you should not, just as black and Hispanic people, you a cheerleader. You know what I mean? These sporting games, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to watch a basketball game or a football game, right? I'm not saying it's a sin. But understand this, is that these athletes don't give a damn about you. And those that do decide to stand up, the true test is if they're willing to leave their wealth to stand up for their people, right? What did Moses do? Moses lived in Pharaoh's house. He grew up under the tutelage of Pharaoh, and he grew up in wealth. And what did he do? He left all that just so he wouldn't enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. He decided to give that all up to be able to just stand for his people, right? Ride with his people. And if athletes could understand how much, if they could understand how much power they wield and how they could make a change if they didn't care more about the money than they did about their people, then I mean you would see this place be turned upside down overnight. You see what I'm saying? So understand that the games are very important to calm down civil unrest. Sporting arenas and the sporting games are very important to calm it down, right? Yeah, Khan. That's what. Yeah, don't get caught up with the lives in the sport, basically. So yeah, Khan, I agree. So we have to understand that this is something that is, they're putting a lot of pressure to get these sporting events up and running because they know that if we shut down again, there is going to be more civil unrest, and they know that they need to be able to fulfill that fire that our oppressor has in him. Right? To be able to calm that fire down by entertaining him. And with that, we're the Israelite School Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. We've been teaching so-called Negroes, so-called Hispanics, and so-called Native Indians that they're the Lord's chosen people according to the Bible. We've been teaching this truth since 1969 under Commander General Yohana. Tomorrow's class is the Brotherhood class from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. So tune in tomorrow. And with that, Shalom, Israel.